Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are in week 4 of our summer series on the 10 Commandments. We're going to be talking about the 5th commandment, honor your father and mother. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, God says this. He says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." So up until this point, we have discussed the first 4 commandments, which would have been written on the first of the 2 stone tablets of God's law. That first tablet, the first 4 commands, all had to do with loving God properly. But on this second tablet, starting with the 5th commandment, honor your father and mother, we begin to learn how to love our neighbors properly. And this speaks to the importance of this commandment for how we interact with the people around us and the people that are closest to us, as it starts off the second set of commandments. This commandment begins slightly differently from the majority of the other commandments. Most of the 10 commandments are "you shall nots," meaning that God is highlighting specific things that his people should not be doing. This commandment, similar to the previous one about the Sabbath, is a direct command to do something rather than not to do something. It's a "you shall" command. An important point in the difference between these 2 types of commands is in the way they are accomplished. A person obeys a "you shall not" command by simply not doing that specific thing, which is often easier said than done. However, a "you shall" command must be continually done at all times in order for it to be obeyed. God doesn't say, "Honor your father and mother at this specific time and in this specific way." Instead, the command simply says to honor them, and we must be persistent in that. Knowing this, it's crucial that we understand what it really means to honor our parents. Does this mean we must blindly obey every word they say, or does this mean we are never allowed to get upset with them? There are a lot of important questions that this commandment brings to the surface, so let's talk about it. To get a little technical, the root Hebrew word for honor means to make heavy or weighty. Now, this doesn't mean that if you want to honor your parents, you should go up to them and tell them that they weigh a ton and are super heavy. Rather, this idea of making something weighty means to take something very seriously. Think of it like meeting a king or a queen, or a famous actor, or a celebrity. Whether you have experienced something like that yourself, or you have seen how other people react when they are in the presence of these figures, we get a picture of what it means to honor someone. Now, while people can often idolize those figures and show them respect in an unhealthy way, which is what God explicitly deals with earlier in these list of commandments, giving someone respect and attention or distinction isn't inherently wrong, and it's what honoring someone can look like. Honoring your parents should bring a similar heart posture, as God is pointing us towards in this commandment. Honoring your parents means showing them respect, trying to obey them as much as you can, not being hostile towards them, and actively trying to love them in this special way as far as you can. God has given parents and caretakers the heavy responsibility of nurturing children rightly, and so God also gives children the responsibility to honor them. Now, maybe some of us don't have a relationship with our biological parents, or maybe those who have taken care of us and raised us have treated us poorly, and we believe they are not worthy of honor. These are all real and important factors that come into play when we consider this commandment, and it's important that we talk about it. Firstly, in this commandment, when we talk about honoring our parents, this is meant to point us to those people in our life that have raised us, who have taken care of us, regardless of if they are strictly our biological parents or not. So whether they are grandparents, step-parents, guardians, or any kind of caretaker, honoring those people is what God's commandment is trying to get at. And it's not exclusive to just a person's biological mother and father. Secondly, what if our relationship with our parents isn't good? Maybe somebody has mistreated you, and there are wounds that they have caused in your heart and your mind. Are we still supposed to honor those people? To answer this question, we have to get to the heart of Jesus and the heart of the Christian faith. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 to 44, "You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." This is one of the greatest challenges that Jesus calls his believers to. Loving your enemies is exactly what Jesus did when he showed love and compassion to those who crucified him. And the only way we will ever be able to love people who harm us is by God's power. So when Jesus calls us to love our enemies, and when we are called to honor our parents who maybe have treated us terribly, it's a call to showcase Christ's love to them in spite of their actions and the way that they have treated us. However, honoring them does not mean that you have to put yourself in a dangerous situation or that you have to have a completely renewed relationship with those people right away. But what it does speak to most strongly is the heart posture you have towards those people and the ways in which you do interact with them to be grounded in love. So understanding those ideas about honoring our parents, we will also discuss the second part of that commandment, where God makes a promise to those who obey it that they will live long in the land the Lord their God is giving them. The Apostle Paul makes an interesting note of this commandment in the book of Ephesians, where he says that this is the first commandment with a promise. The promise that it will go well with those who obey it, and that they will have a long and a good life. It's important to remember that in each one of these commandments, God is telling us something about ourselves. God is not giving us these commandments to satisfy himself. Rather, he is communicating eternal truths about his heart and about our own hearts. In this fifth commandment, we see that God is telling us that as humans, the only way for our society to truly work and for people to thrive is through a family unit. And a crucial part of that family unit involves children holding their parents in honor and distinction. Pastor Darrell Johnson said this in his book on the Ten Commandments. The family is the thread that keeps the fabric of our corporate life united and strong. As the family goes, so goes a society. So God is revealing to us that part of keeping a family unified and strong not only falls to the parents' responsibilities to raise, protect, and provide for their children, but also for their children to respect and obey them, which is the essence of honoring them. In return, our lives are blessed by having a strong family unit where families take care of each other, love each other, and provide for each other. When I was 17, turning 18, just as I was graduating high school in the middle of COVID first starting, my grandfather became very sick, and he was unable to take care of himself. Because of COVID and all the restrictions, my family was unable to get my grandfather into a nursing home where he could get professional help. So instead, my family and I took it upon ourselves to take care of my grandfather. For 6 months, we all took turns staying at his house with him. But since he basically could not do anything for himself, my dad and I were there almost every single day to help him and take care of his most basic needs. This was an incredibly difficult time for everyone. Yet through that experience, I grew immensely and became much closer with my grandfather. I got to see firsthand the results of this commandment play out in real time. I saw how a united family could come together to serve and honor my grandfather, to take care of him and love him in his time of need, and to not leave him alone, which more than likely would have sped his decline. This commandment to honor our parents and the promise attached to it shows us God's heart for families to love and care for each other, and shows us our own needs to be surrounded by those we love and trust. So now we have an idea of what honoring our parents looks like. It involves respecting and obeying them, taking our relationship with them seriously, loving them as Jesus calls us to love others, and recognizing those that take care of us. We begin to see how this promise in the second half of the commandment plays out as well, and how God's commandments aim to give us better lives because he knows us best. He's our creator after all. But how do we go about doing this? What are some practical steps we could take to try and honor our parents better? Well, each of our situations may be different, and talking to your leader about your specific situation with your parents and how you can effectively honor your parents will give you the most specific steps. But here is a helpful idea you can take with you for this week. Throughout the whole Bible, and even the Ten Commandments, God is most concerned with people's hearts, not just their actions. Our actions are important, absolutely, but the condition of our hearts almost always dictates what our actions will be. You see, God is concerned about our heart's position towards our parents. God is calling each one of us to posture our hearts in a way that honors our parents, and this in turn will change our practical actions towards them. This can look different depending on who your parents are and what they appreciate. Perhaps offering to help out more around the house, like doing chores, is something that will show them that you love them and honor them. Or maybe taking a couple moments to intentionally tell them how much you love and appreciate them is what they would really like. But at the heart of this commandment involves a changing of our hearts towards our parents. So, this week, try to think of ways you can show honor and love to your parents. Well, that's all for this week. Let's continue this conversation about how we can honor our mother and father in our small groups. See you next week, everybody.